Good morning. Let me see if I can get this open here without breaking it. Is that okay? Okay, good. All right, Miss Janie, I got one for you. The number 18, that is Eli Manning's number at Gold, yes. And also, it is our speed limit on campus. You are not allowed to go any faster than 18. All of our signs, originally it was Archie's number, which was 21. And then when Eli came along, they changed all of the signs, and now it's 18. And you will get a ticket, so don't try us. Anyway, it is so good to be here. You know, I mean, my Lord, we've waited. It's been a year almost that I've been waiting to come down here. And please, if this mic starts to get a little wonky, I have one of those voices. My mother used to always say, "Oh my God, Elizabeth, it's just your voice." It carries. It just carries. Which is just nice mama way of saying, "My God, you are so loud." So if I start screaming at y'all, just let me know. But we're going to talk about how my husband got me tricked into doing a vegetable farm. We're going to talk about how I got on the Today Show. We're going to talk about my books, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other fun things in between. So I was the head chef at Viking Range Corporation, and it was just everything I'd ever wanted. I absolutely loved being there. And my husband was a home builder at the time, and he just kept telling me, you know, "I don't have time to build you a house. I don't have time to build you a house. I don't have time to build you a house." And so I lived in rental after rental after rental. So it was kind of like, you know, the cobbler's children who have no shoes. This was the builder's wife who has no home. And so I found out accidentally, because he was trying to keep it a secret, that he was building a 10-bedroom duck mansion for he and his 10 best friends at the Hutton Camp. Mm-hmm. Yes. And so anyway, he came home that day, and I said, "Okay, Luke," I said, "I'm either getting a house or I'm getting a divorce, and I don't care which one. So you just go ahead and decide how you want to handle this." So anyway, he ended up building me the home of my dreams. I mean, honey, it was everything I've ever wanted. I had 2 Viking dishwashers, because Lord, you know, when you work there, honey, they just about give it to you. And I had an ice maker. It's all I've ever wanted in my whole life. And so I was just as happy as I could be. I was going to live and die in that house. They were going to lay me out on my dining room table, open up the doors to my china cabinet just so everybody could see, because I just loved it so much. And that was going to be it for me. And so you can imagine how upset I was the day that he came home and started talking about his friend over in Oxford who wanted to start a vegetable farm. And he wouldn't stop talking about it. He said, "Well, you know, he's got this really great vegetable farm down in Hustler, Louisiana. And they grow all these beautiful vegetables, and they're selling them to all these great restaurants in New Orleans. And it's, you know, doing really, really well. And he has this land over here in Oxford." And, you know, I said, finally, I looked at him, I said, "Luke, what does this have to do with me? And why are you still talking about it?" And he said, "Well, because he's looking for somebody that knows how to grow vegetables," which Luke had been a farmer before he was a builder. "And he's also looking for somebody that understands the restaurant market so that they can sell the vegetables and that knows chefs." And I looked at him and I said, "Again, I don't know what this has to do with me. And why are we still talking about it?" And so he just would not let it go. And so finally, he kept explaining, you know, all the concept and what was going to happen. And he said, "Let's just at least go over there and look at the farm. Let's just go over to Oxford and look at the farm." So I said, "That's fine." So we drove over there, and the whole time I'm over there, I'm trying to explain to him that I am claustrophobic and that I cannot live in the hills over there in Oxford. I mean, it's just, I could get stuck in between 2 of those hills, and Lord have mercy, I mean, I'd just die. And anyway, so we got over to the farm, and, you know, it wasn't real steep hills. It was more kind of rolling hills. And there was this house at the back of the farm that looked just like Tara. And I was kind of like, I don't know about this. So then we went down to Hustle, Louisiana, and started visiting with our soon-to-be partners and seeing what they were doing. And we were in the fields with them, and they were pulling out these vegetables out of the ground that were things that I had only seen in magazines. I mean, the most beautiful baby Easter egg radishes and beautiful Chioggia beets and, oh my God, red vein spinach. I mean, things that I'd always wanted to have or to be around, but this was well before you could go to a Whole Foods, anytime you wanted and get beautiful vegetables. And so I kind of lost my mind, and on the way home I said, okay, Luke, let's do this. Let's do it. And so we got back to Cleveland and sold our home almost immediately. And then I stayed back in Cleveland to get the girls through school, because we had 3 girls in school. And he went on over to Oxford to start getting everything ready. And so during that time, I really didn't get to see him very often. And one of my friends, Kadia, called me, and she said, Elizabeth, she said, you will not believe what they are doing down at the beauty parlor. And I said, what? And she said, honey, they are doing eyelash extensions. And Lord, y'all don't know anything about me, but I have wanted long eyelashes all of my life. And I didn't even say goodbye to her. I swear to God, I hung that phone up, and I got on that phone and I said, Frida, listen. I said, I hear y'all doing eyelash extensions down there. I don't care if y'all gonna super glue them on. I don't care if I'm gonna be blind for the rest of my life. I said, I want them. And so she said, that's fine, come on in. And it was great, because the next day I was gonna see Luke. I was going over, we were gonna have our first harvest. I was gonna take vegetables to Memphis to start, kind of opening up the market and talking to my friends that had restaurants. And so anyway, so I get in there and I get my eyelashes done. And ladies, y'all know exactly. So, you look in the mirror and it's just like, oh God, I could hear the angels singing. I mean, it was the best in the world. The only problem was, and I know y'all done this, so you know how sometimes you go in Walmart and you think, oh, these little throw pillows are cute. I think I'll get a couple of these and, bring them home and freshen up my couch, and you put them on the couch. That couch was fine till you bought those new pillows. Now the couch looks like it's gone to hell in a handbasket, And that's exactly what was going on with me. So now I had these beautiful eyelashes, but everything else was just terrible. So I said, do y'all have time to blow my hair out? They said, yeah, let's blow your hair. So I got my hair blown out, then I got my nails done. And then Frida walked by and she said, you know what else we're doing? And I said, no, what? She said, honey, we are doing spray tans. I said, well, Lord, y'all sign me up and spray me down, I want it. And so, I left that salon looking like a puffed up peacock. I was so proud. And anyway, so the next morning I got up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 or whatever, because I wanted to get over there when all the guys started harvesting the vegetables. And so I hopped in my car and ran over there. And half of our staff didn't show up that day. So instead of me, sort of watching this harvest, I was actually harvesting. So I was, out in the field, and I'm picking all the vegetables, and I'm picking, and all of a sudden I look up, and these clouds start coming in. And they're coming in from almost all sides. And they're big, and they're black, and they're moving really, really fast. And it was just like, I've never seen anything like it in my life. And so I kept picking faster and faster and faster. I'm in the middle of this field, out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm looking, and I've got just begging the guys that were with me, hurry up, we gotta hurry up. And so I decided at this one point, I looked and I thought, if I don't get out now, it's gonna be bad. So I ended up starting to walk out of the field, and all of a sudden, honey, those clouds broke. And I've never been so wet in all my life. And I know y'all don't know anything about eyelash extensions, but those little suckers can't get wet for 48 hours. And honey, they were so matted up, I couldn't see, I was blind. I fell down in the middle of the squash patch. Y'all, my hands, they were so pretty and manicured, and they've got that red clay dirt over there. It was so thick under my nails, it took me 2 months to get that out. I mean, face first in the mud, absolutely horrible. And I finally got myself up on my knees, and I pried one of my eyelashes, my eyes open with my hand, and y'all, all I could see was that spray tan, honey, and it was leaving me. Y'all, I'm telling you, I look like a variegated zucchini. I didn't wash the spray tan off. I thought that's just how it was. Y'all, my husband came over and he finally saw me out there wallowing and crying, and he looked at me and he said, "My God, what is wrong with you?" And I said, "Oh my God, honey, there's so many things that are wrong with me. We can't do this. I'm not a farmer." I said, "We gotta go back to the Delta. I can't do this." And he said, "Let me explain something to you real quick, Elizabeth. We don't have a house. We sold it. And do you see that big green tractor over there? We bought it." And so that's what I like to refer to as the crying phase of my life. I cried more that first year than I've ever cried in my life. And just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, the tomatoes came in. That fool decided that he was going to plant 10,000 tomato plants. Okay, yes, this lady obviously grows tomatoes. If you could have seen the horror and shock on her face. Because 10,000 tomato plants makes hundreds of thousands of pounds of tomatoes. And so I was doing my very best. I would load up this prison van. That's what he bought me. It was a prison van. It had bars on the windows, it had locks on the doors, and it had no air conditioning. And it was July. And I would load up the prison van and I would go to Memphis and I would go to all of the restaurants, show them all the vegetables and try to sell as many as I could. And anyway, I was on my way home one day and Luke called and he was just beside himself. And he said, "Elizabeth, if you don't get home right now," he said, "I swear I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself." And I said, "Well, I'm doing the best I can. The prison van only goes 48 miles an hour, but I'll get there when I get there. Hang on." And so I got there, and we had this big room that was floor to ceiling shelving, and it had, that's where we would sort the tomatoes in this big room. And I barely could get the door open. He was like, just look what's in there. And I was looked in enough to see that there were tomatoes everywhere. There were thousands of pounds of tomatoes. And he looked at me and he said, you gotta find somebody. You gotta go sell these. You've gotta sell them. You know, they're gonna go bad. You have to sell them. And I didn't feel like after he had, he wasn't in a very good place, obviously. I didn't think this was the time to remind him that it was his bright idea to grow 10,000 tomato plants. And so I decided that the best thing that I could do, because there was no restaurant that was gonna be able to take this volume, and so I just started calling wholesalers, because at least I could just get rid of them. And every wholesaler that I called said the same thing. "Nope, ma'am, listen, we don't need any tomatoes. It's been a real good year for tomatoes, and we got all we can stand." And so I called probably about 4 different places, and they all told me the same thing. And finally, on the last one, I had decided I wasn't gonna hang up. I was not gonna hang up until somebody took these tomatoes. And so I got on the phone with this one secretary and an easy way. And anyway, she said, "No, no ma'am, we don't need any." I said, "Oh no, but you don't understand." I said, "I have 30 different varieties. I have every color under the sun. We have heirlooms. I have every single size that you could possibly imagine. We have orange tomatoes. We have green striped tomatoes. We have purple tomatoes." She said, "I don't care. I don't care what color your tomatoes are. We don't need them. It's been a very good..." I said, "I know it's been a good year." And you know how I know? Because I have 7,000 pounds of tomatoes that I've got to get rid of. And I understand that you don't need any, but my husband, he says he's going to kill himself. And if he will or not, but I have 3 precious girls, and I picked the Delta absolutely certifiable. I was out of my mind. And so she said, listen, I tell you what, she said, I'll let you come over here and you can bring your tomatoes and, you know, I'll get Barry to see you, but I'm not gonna make you any promises. And I mean, I did 3 seconds. I said, yes, ma'am, hung up that phone before she could change her mind. I'd been in the vegetable business for a very short time, but I'd learned a lot about the vegetable business, and I'd heard a lot about old Barry. Well, now Barry, he was a sexist. God awful. Two-timing, cheating, pig.
Oh.
And so, honey, I hopped in my prison van, I ran up to the house, and I got my 13-year-old daughter's shortest shorts, and honey, mama put them on. And then I got my lowest cut top, and I went downstairs and I put that on, and I ran on back to the van and up to the barn, and they loaded all those tomatoes, and honey, mama went to town.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Anyway, so I get there, and I hopped out of the van, and Barry's standing there, and I said, hey Barry, how are you? And he said, I'm good. And I said, Barry, would you like to see my tomatoes? And he said, yes. He said, I think I do. I said, I hoped you'd say that, Barry. And I mean, I unloaded that just like this. I mean, all 7,000 pounds of a Barry. Aren't these the best looking tomatoes you've ever seen? Honey, y'all, poor Barry. I swear to God, man was sweating and shaking so bad by the time I finished, he could hardly write that check for $12,000. He did. God bless that man. Anyway, it had gotten to the point that, you know, the tomatoes still coming. They would not stop coming. And, I mean, at night I was scared to go to sleep because Lord knows there were going to be more. It had gotten to the point that we weren't even getting invited out to other people's homes anymore because they knew if I was coming, I was going to bring 3 crates of tomatoes and I wasn't leaving with them. And, I mean, I'd pull into my friends' driveways at night, and I'd turn my lights out, and I'd put tomatoes on their front porch, and I would ease back out of the driveway. I mean, I was giving it to my children to play with. I was like, hey, you remember that Mr. Potato Head we had? Okay, we're going to start a new game. It's called Mr. Tomato Head. Anyway, it had gotten just ridiculous, and I had just gotten to the point where I had really given up, and I would just sit on my front porch, and I would cry, and I would drink straight vodka. And finally, my husband, at one point, he walked by, and he looked at me, and he said, you know, Elizabeth, he said, there are people in this world that like other things in their vodka besides ice. We do have all of these tomatoes. Why don't you try making a Bloody Mary mix? And so that's what I did. I started making Bloody Mary mix. Sarah Burden and I, who are right over here, we started cooking down tomatoes and straining them. And the good news is it takes tons of tomatoes to make a little bit of juice. So it really started working, and we were canning it, and it was working out really, really well. And then it got to be too big. It got to be this thing that was just, you know, it was more than what we could handle. And so we started bottling. We partnered with a bottler, and he started using our tomatoes. He would bottle it for us, and then we sold it all over the United States. And now that product is something that you can go on and buy from Amazon right now, and it's under the Debutante Farmer label. And so that was God's answer, you know, because not only was I sitting on that porch drinking vodka, I was praying. I was praying a lot. And you know, it was unbelievable how, I don't know, you know, life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. Life gave me tomatoes, honey, and I made Bloody Mary mix. The bottom line was, God's always going to give you an answer. He's always going to give you an out as long as you ask. And that Bloody Mary mix was my answer, and it was my saving grace. And it also was one of those things that, you know, when you're faced with that big, that huge of an obstacle, it makes you not real scared for anything, And anyway, so about that point, we had gotten to the time that I was starting to get real tired of Luke being my boss, Luke, my husband, being my boss. I didn't like that. And so I almost ran over him with the prison van on purpose one day. And at that point, I really kind of decided this probably wasn't the best thing for me, for him, or for our marriage. And so I went back to catering. So we redid this beautiful barn that was on the farm, and I started my catering company. And I got a call that changed everything. So there was a dinner that was going to be taking place at Roanoke, which is William Faulkner's home in Oxford, Mississippi. And I was going to be the first person to cook out of his kitchen since his death. And there were going to be 12 people there at this dinner. And one of them was Andy Lack, who he had been president of NBC 20 years before, and he was taking back over on Monday. I'm going to kind of go all the way back real quick just to give you some reference on this. One of my first things that I ever did was to start a little company called Instead of Flowers. So basically, if somebody died or had a baby, then we would bring food. Jency, my best friend, and I, we loved like hanging out. She just got married. I just had a baby. She'd come over every day. We'd watch TV. We'd drink coffee. We'd go have lunch. We just, just have a good time. Well, her husband decided that she was going to have to get a job. Well, that just really upset me because then what was I going to do? I couldn't go to work with her with the baby. So I said, let's just start this business. It'll be called Instead of Flowers. We'll do it out of the house. We'll make casseroles. We'll deliver them. It'll be great. And so she said, yes, this is fabulous. Her husband, of course, he called it Instead of a Job, which we did not appreciate. But we weren't very busy in the beginning, so we did a lot of watching of the Today Show, and Martha Stewart was on one morning right before Thanksgiving, and she brought her turkey. And it was very underwhelming. She may as well have just been cooking a chicken. It was just nothing. And I looked at Jency and I said, you know what, Jency? I said, everybody needs to know about my grandmother's pillowcase turkey. And one day I'm going to be on the Today Show and I'm going to do that turkey. And she said, that is a great idea. This is what you want. Yes. And anyway, 15 years went by and I would think about it every so often. I would, when I was watching it in the morning, I would look at them and I would say, hey, co-workers, I'm going to come see y'all real soon. Good morning, Al, I'm coming. And anyway, so it was just kind of always this thing that I had. Didn't know how I was going to make it happen. Didn't know why, who, what, none of that. I just knew that I would be there one day. Well, when I found out that Andy Lack was coming to this dinner and he was about to be back president of NBC, of course, the only reason I thought he was there was to discover me, obviously. And so, honey, we cooked I have never cooked so hard to feed 12 people in my life. We put the dog on. I am not lying. And it was this really wonderful dinner, and at the end of it, Andy looked at me and he held my hands and he said, you, my dear, are wildly talented. And I said, oh, good. Listen, I said, I am so glad because I've been wanting to be on that Today Show now for 15 years. And I said, I know you've got a lot to do on Monday. You got to unpack your pens and pencils. You got to get that little nameplate right outside your door. You got that whole Brian Williams thing you're going to have to figure out. But as soon as you do that, I'm going to need for you to put me on the show. And so, of course, super sweet guy who's assured me, yes, of course, yes, absolutely. And anyway, the dinner ended and I just kept checking my phone like every 5 minutes for months and nothing. And so I just wasn't gonna let that, be it. I knew this was meant for me. And so I sent him our debutante farmer Bloody Mary mix, pimento cheese, cheese straws, and a little notepad that said what to do today. And so literally on the inside of it, I wrote, number 1, call Elizabeth Heiskell, put her on the Today Show. Number 2, write Elizabeth Heiskell's name on the back of your hand in case you forget about Elizabeth Heiskell by the time you get to work. And so I went through these 10 things that I wanted him to do. And so that was when I finally got a call, and it was a producer from the Today Show. Well, it was one of those things, nobody called me from New York, and this was way before spam calls, and so I saw that New York, y'all, and I almost died. So we got on the phone, and I talked to Debbie for 2 hours. I talked to her. I talked to her. Poor thing, she didn't even have a chance to say a word. And by the end of it, she said, you know what I really would like to do? I would love to come and see your vegetable farm. I want to come and experience one of these tomato dinners that you're doing. I really want to come down there. I was like, okay, all right, that's fine. And she said, well, you sound really disappointed. And I said, well, I mean, Debbie, it's just the dream was, and she said, listen, we all know the dream, okay? 15 years you've been wanting to be on the show. But if you'll just let us please come down there. She said, do you know what people would pay to have the Today Show come to them? And I was like, I'm sure it's a lot. I said, but I've been on this prison van down here at this farm, and I really just wanted to go somewhere. And anyway, so they came down and did a really great segment, and then we were headed into the Grove. It was Ole Miss versus Auburn game, and what are you, Auburn? Okay. I was gonna sign your book. I don't know about now. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so I had my phone and I went to just kind of look at it one time before, because I knew once I got in the Grove it was gonna be a day and I wouldn't probably look at my phone. And there was an email from Debbie, and she said, would you be willing to come the Monday before Thanksgiving? And do you by any chance have a turkey recipe? Nobody knew about that turkey but me and Jency and Jesus. I mean, that was it. I'd never really said the turkey part of this again since that first day. And it absolutely blew me away. And so we were so excited. I mean, it was just everything. And so we went up the Sunday before Thanksgiving. We had played, it always goes back to sports at Ole Miss. We had played LSU the day before. We had to do all these huge Grove tents, and then we got up the next morning at the crack of dawn. My whole family went, Sarah Burden went, 2 other people from our kitchen went, because, I mean, this was like the biggest thing that had ever happened to me, 15 years. I mean, it was huge. And so we go and we do the show, and I did the pillowcase turkey, 2 minutes and 13 seconds. Y'all, my hand was shaking. It was like this. And I would look at it and I'd say, Lord, please stop that. Make it stop, make it stop. And so that was it. That was my segment. And I was so excited. And we left and we went to have lunch at Tavern on the Green. And then I took the girls shopping, and we were outside the dressing room. And I got an email from Debbie, and she said, Elizabeth, we love you so much. We have to have you back. Can you come on Wednesday? I was like, yes, ma'am, I can. And so anyway, so that was the first thing. And then she emailed right back after I said yes. And she said, would the girls be willing to come on? And I said, yes. And she said, well, would Luke be willing to come on? We want to do kind of a family segment. And I immediately responded and I said, yes. And she said, okay, that was 30 seconds from the time that you agreed to do this, and I know that you didn't ask Luke. And I said, well, let me tell you one damn thing. I said, he has had me on a prison van with no air conditioning, and he will do exactly what I tell him to do. And so that was my second segment. The girls were on, Luke was on, Adele was there. When she first came out with Hello, and she sang it in the studio. Y'all, it was just, and all the dogs from the Westminster. You know how they have all I know the dogs. Anyway, it was fabulous. And so then after that, Debbie sat me down after my segment, and she said, Elizabeth, we adore you, and we really want you to come back every month, every 6 months to do segments. And I just could not even take it in. And then a year later, after going on about once every month, every 6 weeks, just depending, she called and she said, we'd really love to sign and contract you. We want you to be the Today Show food contributor. You know, and the thing about it is that my dream was so small. I mean, it was one time. But to me, at that time, my God, it was the biggest thing that I could have ever dreamt of, you know? I don't have an agent, I don't have a publicist, I don't have a manager, I don't have anybody. I was in the middle of a tomato field, literally. And this happened. And, you know, it's interesting to me because the thing that I never let take hold of my dream were the things that I call dream killers, which is the who, the what, the how, the why. If I'd gotten into all that, who, well, I don't know anybody, what, I don't even really know where New York is, how is this gonna happen? Oh my God, the dream would have died immediately. I never stayed there. I only stayed in the dream. I only stayed with Al and with Savannah and, you know, all of that and my sort of make-believe pretend world. And, you know, and it did, and it happened, and it was beyond anything. And so thank God, God's dreams are so much bigger for us as long as we'll surrender, you know, ourselves to Him and to His will. And then the books came along, because once we had the Today Show and I'd gotten that following, then I had a big meeting with Southern Living and ended up writing What Can I Bring? And then they wanted me to rewrite the Southern Living Party Cookbook, so I rewrote that for them. That was their 1971 best-selling cookbook, and so we modernized it and took out all of the sidebars about smoking cigarettes and ashtrays. Not as many congealed salads, I'm sorry ladies, but we did cut almost all of them. And then my last book was Come On Over, and so everything was just kind of going along amazingly until it wasn't. And again, everything goes back to sports at Ole Miss. We were at a restaurant that I love in Oxford, and we were watching the Ole Miss Rebels. It was the night that played baseball. It was the night before they played for the national championship. So, and we were just having the time of our lives. And all of a sudden, I just kind of went like this. You know, I just scratched. I was like, the heck, what is this? And so I went to the bathroom and I took my friend. I was like, come back here and look at this. And I said, what do you think this is? I said, feel this. And she goes, I don't have to feel it, I can see it. And I said, oh God, that's not good. I said, that must be some kind of a fatty tumor, you know, like those little fatty things. And she said, well, you're calling Julie Harper. So thank God my OB is one of my really good friends. And she said, I'll see you Monday morning at 8 a.m. And so then the next day, Ole Miss Rebels won, huge, big fun, the best day ever. And then that Monday morning I went in. And so when we were talking, she said, when's the last time you had a mammogram? And I said, oh, like 8 months ago. And she was like, okay, that's really good. Okay, good. So she goes back, she goes, I'm gonna go and pull it and look at it. And so then she came back into the room and had this real kind of worried look, bad look on her face. She goes, Elizabeth, it wasn't 8 months ago. She said it was 2.5 years ago. I said, well, time flies when you're having fun. And anyway, so then I went and I got an ultrasound, and then we got a biopsy, and then we got the call that nobody wants, which is that I had breast cancer. So it was not hormone driven, so my path was chemo, surgery, and radiation. And it was tough. And I don't think I've ever been so scared in all of my life. I mean, even the tomatoes, which at that point had really been my biggest fear, you know, and getting through that farm, it did nothing compared. And having to tell your children it was the worst day of my life. And it was tough. And so I ended up going to MD Anderson, and you're going through all of this where you're so filled with fear, you're up at night and you're terrified and you cannot sleep. I mean, and I hated to go to sleep because I knew that when I slept it was going to be so dark and I couldn't find the light. And we finally got to MD Anderson and they took me in for my mammogram. This was on my first visit. And there was this little lady that was sitting across from me. And when you get to MD Anderson, they give you these warm robes. And so for like 3 seconds, you feel like you're at a spa until they take your boob and they stick it in that machine and they make it, oh my God, like a vice grip getting that mammogram. And anyway, so we were sitting there and she looked at me and she said, "Aren't these robes just the silver lining?" And I said, "Yeah, no, they're nice. Yeah, they do feel really good." And then she said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, I'm from Oxford." I said, "But my sister-in-law, she lives here in Houston, so I can stay with her." And she said, "Oh, that's another silver lining." And it didn't matter how I responded to this woman, that was immediately what she was going to say. And y'all need to understand, this woman, I mean, she was sick. She had dark circles under her eyes. She had no hair. She was pale. She was thin. And all she could do was focus on these silver linings. And at one point, I swear to God, it was all I could do not to say, "Woman, we are at the cancer hospital, okay? It's not looking good, and you don't look good. You don't have hair. You dark circles. You're thin. What do you do? Silver linings, my butt." All I could do was focus on the fear and all of the things that were terrifying. And but it stuck with me and it wouldn't leave me. And so at that point I decided that that's what I was going to focus on too, and I would not let anything else get into my way or into my thought pattern. I literally focused on silver linings so much that lining that was just a shred when I started became this amazing blanket that I was able to wrap around me and to stay in. It was the thing that took me through chemo when I was so terrified that first day. And every single thing was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's amazing. Our brains are so brilliant, and mine is hyper creative. I'm dumb as a box of rocks, but baby, I am so creative. And so, I mean, you would have thought that first chemo treatment that they were going to literally amputate, limbs, legs. I mean, it was, I had gotten myself to the point that I was sick. I was so scared. And everything they did, I was like, well, that wasn't so bad. Well, that wasn't so bad. Well, that wasn't so bad. And after that day, it was when I realized that, that same brain that I had that got me to the Today Show, that same dreamy brain, the one that got me through the tomatoes and all of these other things, that's the same exact brain that you use to create fearful scenarios. And so rather than using my creativity for bad, I decided that I was only going to use it for good. I called my children and I said, this is how we're going to do this. We are not going to let fear drive this bus. That day is done. It's going to be fine. And even if it isn't, I'm not going to, that's not how I'm going to live my life. And so that was it. So that's how we got through the cancer. And now I am 2 years cancer-free. Thank you.
Praise God.
And so that's, one of the things that I cannot, and now it's like I'm preaching this, and I've sat in rooms just like you are right now, and people were preaching the same thing to me, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else will. Do you understand that?
Yes.
I mean, you hear, oh, you can only pour from a full cup, and it's like, well, my God, I'm just trying to get any kind of a cup right now. I don't have time to deal with that. Well, you know what? If you don't take time for it, God will make sure you do slow down, and He will fix that right on up.
Indeed.
So, anyway, I'm glad to be here. I'm honored to be able to talk to you all about taking care of ourselves, taking time for ourselves. I mean, I applaud you all for taking your Saturday morning to come and to have fun with other women and to focus on your health and to focus on staying strong. That's huge. You could be doing anything right now. And anyway, but I am super, super grateful and cannot thank you all enough.
Hey.